Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam. Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
There is a power cut at our place, so I'll just put off the video to save some battery.
Sure.
Om Adnyan Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Yadati Swakarantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakha Nutamsha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvishe Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Upam Karoti Vachalam Bandham Sanghayate Girim Yapripatamaham Vande Shri Gurundur Paranam Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishvara. Hare Krishna. So welcome back for our Bhakti Shastri session. So we are in 15th chapter. So I'll just share the screen. Yes. So we have seen that from verse number 1 to 6, we saw the discussion that how one can go from material world to spiritual world. That is by detachment and surrender. And then from 7 to 11, we discuss that if there is no detachment, then the result of that is bondage and transmigration. Utkramantam sitam vapi bhunjanam vagunantam vimudananu pashyanti jnana chakshushaha. So that all we discussed in this section. And then the next section which is coming up is 12 to 15. That is Krishna as our maintainer. So we'll see how Krishna is our maintainer in verses from 12 to 15. 16 to 18 is a summary of the Vedanta, also called as Tri Shloki Gita, 3 verses. And finally from 19 to 20, knowing Krishna means knowing everything. So from this verse number 12 to 15, the verse number 12 and 13 will talk that how Krishna is our maintainer on cosmological level. 14th verse will talk that how Krishna is our maintainer on physiological level. And 15th verse will talk that how Krishna is our maintainer on spiritual level. So let's begin. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Yadaditya-gatam tejo
Yadaditya-gatam tejo
jagadbhasayate khilam
jagadbhasyate
yat-chandramasi yat-chagnau
Yat-chandramasi yat-agno
tat-tejo vidhi mamakam.
tat-tejo vidhi mamakam.
Translation.
The splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this whole world, comes from me, and the splendor of the moon and splendor of the fire also from me.
So now, just like we discussed, that verse number 12 and 13, we'll talk about how Krishna is our maintainer on cosmological level. So here what we are seeing is that Krishna is saying, Yadaditya gatam tejo. The teja that is coming from Aditya. Aditya is the sun. And how is that teja? Jagat bhasayate akhilam. All the jagat, they get the light from this sun. Yat chandramasi, yat chagnau. Apart from that, when there is absence of sun, I am also present in the form of moon. My teja is also present in the form of moon and fire. So this is how we can see, as we saw in verse number 7 of this 15th chapter, Natad bhasayate suryo na shashanko na pavakaha. Krishna is describing this material world there, saying that in this material world you need sun, moon, or fire and electricity, whereas in the spiritual world you don't need all these things. So while explaining that, Krishna used these three words, Natad bhasayate suryo na shashanko na pavakaha. So he is talking about Surya, he is talking about Shashanka, and he is talking about Pavaka. Similarly, in this verse also we are saying Surya is Aditya, Shashanka is Chandramasi, and Pavakaha is Agnav. So same things are being used by Krishna to explain that how these are not required in spiritual world, but same things are required here in the spiritual world, and I am providing that. So we can see that in the last verse, that is verse number 11, Krishna has said that Nainam Pashyanti Achetasaha. Those who are yogis, they may be able to see when they are situated in self, but Yatanta Api Akrutatmano, although situated, all trying on their own hard endeavors, if they are Achetasaha, then they cannot see things. So here Krishna is giving chance to those people who are not able to see, Nainam Pashyanti Achetasa, how they can see the presence of the Supreme. That is Krishna explaining in this particular verse. So everyone sees the sun, everyone sees the moon, and everyone needs the fire. But Krishna is very, very merciful that he is making himself available in these very simple forms. So even if somebody is a chetasa, a pashyanti, he is not able to see, still such unintelligent people also can see and understand Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada opens his purport with these same words. So now please, somebody can read this part of the purport.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, go ahead, Prabhuji.
The unintelligent cannot understand how things are taking place, but one can begin to be established in knowledge by understanding what the Lord explains here. Everyone sees the sun, moon, fire, and electricity. One should simply try to understand that the splendor of the sun, the splendor of the moon, and the splendor of electricity or fire coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In such a conception of life, the beginning of Krishna consciousness lies a great deal of advancement for the conditioned soul in this material world.
Yeah. So Krishna is very, very merciful that through such things he is allowing the living entities to be able to see his splendor. So when we see sun, we are supposed to remember, oh, this is by God's grace that I am able to get this light and heat from the sun. And similarly for the moon and the fire. But according to modern scientists, they feel that sun is nothing but some chemical reaction happening there and this and that, Yes, maybe there is some chemical reaction happening, even accepted, but who is making that happen? That has to be understood. So the source behind that is Krishna. That thing is a missing point in these modern scientists. And also they have this theory that Earth is rightly placed exactly at the right position. If it was too close to the sun, then people would burn out. And if it was too away, then there will be too much of cold. So in one sense, if it may be accepted, but that is not true. Why? Because we see that according to Vedic paradigm, soul is sarvagata. He is present everywhere. And even today, the modern scientists themselves have found out bacteria which are present in fire. And there are so many living entities living in water. So this ideology that this position is exact, and if it was here bit little bit here and there, then there will be chaos, is not at all accepted in Vedic paradigm, because in any condition there would be living entities. And if at all we say that yes, it is at exact position, then that is nothing but because of Krishna. So Krishna only put it at that particular place. So that is how we can understand this particular phenomenon. So we see Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport that sun, as soon as the day begins, so with the sunrise, the day begins. So when the sunrise is there, then all living entities also get the energy to work around. Even that is true with all other living entities. Chara and Achara, both kind of living entities, which are moving and non-moving. So they get their strength and all those things. So that is how the importance of rise of sun is. And we see that places when there is no sunrise, people are really in a very terrible situation. So we hear in this English language the phrase of good morning. So from where this has come? So this has come from Britishers. When Britishers see sun in the morning, then they say good morning. Why? Because they don't see sun every day. So that's not the case, but here in India. So, but for them it is like that. And Prabhupada also made a comment that this place, London, it's like hell, because there is no sun. So sun is very, very important for our daily activities. And we also have experienced that in rainy season when there is cloudy, and after that suddenly one day sun comes out and we feel so relieved. It's not that we don't want rain, but when sun comes, there is some different kind of relief. So that is experienced by everyone. And that is how the mercy of the Lord is there. And in Brahma Samhita also, Brahmaji is explaining, Yat Chakshuresha Savita Sakala Grahana, that all the grahas, all the planets are illuminated by this sun, who is nothing but the eye of the Supreme Lord. So like that. And then the second thing which we can see is the fire. So when the day begins, the people need fire for cooking. People need fire to start their factories. So these are words that Prabhupada has used in the purport. It's not my words. So very, very pertinent words Prabhupada is using to the today's day and age. So many factories are there which needs fire. So without that, they cannot work. So all these things are there which are necessary, and Krishna is providing for the living entities who are conditioned in this material world. And also moon, which supplies nourishment to the vegetation, Aushadhi, so that word comes in the next verse. We'll take it when it comes next verse. So he's supplying nourishment to the vegetation, and because of that, we are getting nice foodstuffs to eat. All the vegetables and all are nourished by the moonlight. So, can somebody read this part of the purport which is displayed on the screen?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. From this verse, we can understand that the sun is illuminating the whole universe. There are different universes and there are different suns, moons, and planets also. But in each universe, there is only one sun. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 10.21, the moon is one of the stars. Sunlight is due to the spiritual effulgence in the spiritual sky of the Supreme Lord. Hare Krishna.
Yes. So there is only one source of light according to Vedic paradigm, as against the modern theory that there are many suns. So that's not true. Prabhupada is quoting Bhagavad Gita only 10.21 to explain that actually there is only one sun, and moon is one of the stars, nakshatranam, aham shashi. So there are many nakshatras, that is the stars, and among them Krishna says that I am the moon because it is the brightest of all. So like that we see here that different universes and different suns and planets, and in every universe there is only one sun. So that is coming from the effulgence of the Supreme Lord. So we'll go to the next verse.
Prabhuji, so because we have different universes, so each universe is having its own sun or sun and moon, or is only one sun moon for all the universes?
No. Every universe has its own sun and moon. But in one universe, there is one sun and one moon. That's it.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Gama vishya bhutani
Gama vishya bhutani
yamyaham ojasa
dharayamyaham ojasa
aushadhi sarva
Krishnami cha aushadhi sarva
somo bhutva rasatmakaha.
Somo bhutva rasatmakaha.
Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I enter into each planet, and by my energy, they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables.
So here Krishna is mentioning that Gam avishya bhutani dharayami aham ojasa. My power is such, or my energy is such, that I enter into each planet and make them stay in the particular orbit. So Brahma Samhita speaks about this. Eko pyasau rachayitum jagadanda koti yachaktirasti jagadanda chayaya danta andantarastha paramanu chayantarastham govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. So Brahma ji is speaking here. Eka api asau rachayitum jagadanda koti. So the Supreme Lord is situated at one place, but rachayitum, he is making this rachana, or he is creating it. What he is creating? Jagadanda koti. That millions and millions of Jagadanda. And what he is doing by creating that, he is not leaving them as it is, just like some of the philosophers in this modern day think. So there are these theists who say that God exists and God is there. God has created everything and God is maintaining everything. And then there are atheists who say that God does not exist, he has not created anything, he is not maintaining. And there is some class of people who is called as detheist. They say that God have created it, but he doesn't have power to maintain. It is maintained by its own. But that's not the real fact. Krishna has created everything and he is also maintaining everything. So how he is maintaining? This verse explains. Ekopi asav rachayitum jagadanda koti. He has created jagadanda koti, and then Andantarastham, in each of those under, Jagadanda, he is entering in the form of Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. So we know this, that there are two Chaturvyavas, Pradyumna, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Sankarshan, Vasudev, sorry, Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, VSPA. So this one Chaturvyava, and then second Chaturvyava comes from the first Sankarshan, again Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. And from the second Sankarshan comes Mahavishnu, or also called as Karanodakashaya Vishnu. And from his pores, bodily pores, Jagadanda Koti, millions and millions of Brahmandas are manifested. And what does this Mahavishnu do? He doesn't leave them as it is, but he enters in each and every Jagadanda, in each and every Brahmanda, in the form of Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. That's why it is said Andantarastham. He enters into the under. Paramanu Chayantarastham. Not only that, once he is inside the under, also called as Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, then he creates everything in that particular Brahmanda and enters into each and every atom and the space between the atom. Paramanu Chaya Antarastham. He enters into the Paramanu, each and every Paramanu, and Antarastham, the space between the Paramanu. So this is how the Lord doesn't simply creates things, but he makes plans to even maintain it, so that the living entities can make their best effort to try out their enjoying mentality and eventually get frustrated and come back to Krishna. So Krishna is making all this arrangement for them. And that's why here Krishna is mentioning that Gama Vishyacha Bhutani. So in this form, as Krishna is entering in every atom, that means he's also entering into the every planet and holding that planet in particular orbit. So we see that when modern scientists, they describe the term gravity. If they are asked what is gravity, then they will answer that the force that holds the planets in orbit, that is gravity. And if we go and ask him, what is that force that holds the planet in orbit? And they will answer gravity. So they practically don't have real understanding. So it's like the circular thing which never ends. But the reality, as we come to know from Vedic scriptures and here from Bhagavad Gita, that the force which holding the planet in the orbit is coming from Krishna. The original source is Krishna, and in this context, it is Kshirodakashaya Vishnu, who is entering into every atom and into the heart of every living entity. So like that. And Pushnami Chaushadhi Sarva. So yeah, before going to that, let's read this part of the purport, which the Prabhupada is explaining so wonderfully with what very nice example. So please read.
When the spirit soul is there, a living man can float on the water. But when the living spark is out of the body and the body is dead, the body sinks. Of course, when it is decomposed, it floats just like straw and other things. But as soon as the man is dead, he at once sinks in the water. Similarly, all these planets are floating in space, and this is due to the entrance of the supreme energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His energy is sustaining each planet just like a handful of dust. Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
So if handful of dust, Prabhupada goes on further to explain this, if handful of dust is kept in the hand, then they remain intact. But if they are just simply thrown, then all the particles will get dispersed. So similarly, if Lord removes his energy, then everything will be dispersed. So we see in the story of that Trishanku who wanted to, barge into heavenly world without any qualification, and he is taking shelter of Vishwamitra Muni to go there. So he is finally thrown off by Indra, and again Vishwamitra is putting him with his energy back. Again he is thrown down by Indra. And finally, Vishwamitra becomes angry and he creates one, one loka, separate loka for Trishanku. But unfortunately, that because Lord is not present there, it starts rotating and it is not at all stable. It becomes completely unstable. Finally, Vishwamitra only prays to the Lord and Lord enters and makes it stable. So the point here is we can see that without the presence of spirit, living matter cannot have any shape, cannot be sustained. And Prabhupada is explaining this with a wonderful example of the body, how it floats when there is a spirit soul and how it sinks when spirit soul has left the body. So very thoughtful example. And then in the last part of the purport of the previous verse, Prabhupada is speaking this. Please read this.
By the moonshine, all the vegetables are nourished. The moonshine is so pleasing that people can easily understand that they are living by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Without his mercy, there cannot be sun. Without his mercy, there cannot be moon. And without his mercy, there cannot be fire. And without the help of sun, moon, and fire, no one can live. These are some thoughts to provoke Krishna consciousness in the conditioned soul. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yeah. So why did I read this purport now? Is because it is more relevant with this last line, last two lines of this 13th verse, that Pushnami Chaushadhi Sarva Somo Bhutva Rasatmaka. And Srila Prabhupada many times is so merciful to us that he gives many explanations beforehand, before they are coming up, so that we don't get confused. So Prabhupada is explaining this part of the purport, which is actually from previous verse, that is verse number 12, but it has substantial relevance with this verse. And in this particular purport, Prabhupada says, please read.
Without the moonshine, the vegetables can neither grow nor taste succulent. Human society is working, living comfortably, and enjoying food due to the supply from the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, mankind could not survive. The word rasatmakaha is very significant. Everything becomes palatable by the agency of the Supreme Lord through the influence of the moon.
Yeah. So that is why even in farming, many times these things are considered when is Purnima, that is full moon. So that at that particular time, there is lot of juice flowing into the plants and trees. So when they have to cut the trees, also they find whether it is Purnima or whether it is Amavasya. And also for sowing and harvesting and all those things. So this is very much important. So moon has got a lot of connection with farming and all these things. So because it helps the vegetation to grow. So that is very, very important. Yes. So regarding this, so like we saw in these two verses, that how Krishna at the cosmological level is helping us to be or function particular world. Bring the light through sun, moon, and fire. He is also giving us become stable. Am I audible here?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu, you are audible, Prabhu.
Okay, fine. Because there are some messages that is
Your audio a little choppy, Prabhu. I think your network issue is a little bit, last few sentences is fine, but a little bit rusty. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
how is it now?
Now also a little bit
How is it?
distorted, Prabhuji.
a minute. Just a minute, please give me a minute. Is it better now?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
So,
Better.
yeah. So I was explaining that how in the last two verses we saw that Krishna is helping the living entities, conditioned souls at the cosmological level. Now let's see helping us the physical.
Sir, Prabhuji,
Are
same
there
issue.
any questions regarding this? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, your voice is breaking.
Yeah. Is it better now this time?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji.
Yeah, as of now, better, Prabhuji.
So any questions so far regarding these two verses?
One question, Prabhuji, I have.
Yes, go.
Prabhuji. So it is talking about the moonshine, but there are so many areas where moonshine itself is completely missing, Prabhuji. So if you go to some kind of Western countries, okay, so it is it has to be live with that. Is that you were trying to say, Prabhu? Yeah.
I could not hear last part. Your this thing. In many parts in
There
Western
are
countries, no moonshine, you said,
of the
and
eastern
then
parts like Japan and Europe and in many of the US country, North America countries, they don't see moon. It's mainly it's been clouded. Most of the times it is clouded, Prabhuji. So because the experiencing moonshine is very very low. So we are saying that over there the taste will not be there. Or something like that we are trying to conclude here, Prabhuji.
see now moonshine is not seen visible to the humans, but how vegetation accepts moonshine, that is not known. So even if it may be cloudy, to some extent they may be getting the to some extent we may say they may be getting it through the moon. And modern technology, they are trying to artificially induce everything. So there may be so-called juice also, but that is not natural and it is always dangerous. And we have seen so many health hazards, especially they are very carcinogenic. So I'm not very sure about how the moonshine actually enters into the vegetation. What is the actual mechanism of that? Whether in cloudy area it happens or it's it's like solar system which doesn't work when it is cloudy. So I don't know whether it is like that, because Krishna's arrangements are little more better than what humans make. But certainly if there is full moonshine, there will be much more effect that can be understood. And the juice to the vegetation comes from the moon, that is a real fact. Now, when there is less moon, then certainly there will be less juice.
Okay, Prabhuji, got it. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Any other? Okay. So we'll go to the next verse, 14. Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva
Aham
Vaishvanaro
So, Bhutva,
Nam Deham Ashritaha
Pranam Dehamashritah,
Ashritaha
Apana Samayuktaha
Pranavana Samayuktaha,
Yuktaha
Pachamyannam vidham.
Pachamyannam
Chaturvidham.
chaturvidham.
Please read translation.
Can I read it, Prabhu?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Translation. I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming, to digest the 4 kinds of foodstuff.
So just like we saw that Krishna is there on the cosmological level to help the living entity, similarly he is there on physiological to help us or help the body to function it all their functions. So here he is saying aham vaishvanaro bhutva, I am the fire of digestion. Praninam deham ashrita, to for which kinds of bodies I am providing this fire of digestion? Those who have taken shelter of the Deha. So instead of living entity taking shelter of Krishna, becoming Krishna Ashritaha, the living entity has taken shelter of the Deha. And despite that, Krishna is providing all the facilities. So when it comes to digestion, we can all see that none of us actually worry about how the digestion is happening unless and until it is not functioning well. So till the time everything is going well, nobody worries how the digestion is happening, if I eat, what happens to it, how it gets converted into, so modern scientists, they have brought out the theory of how things get, how the food gets digested, how it gets converted, and how you get blood and energy. So that is all there. But can anyone replace that with some machine? So that is not possible. Even modern doctors themselves have acknowledged that how this digestion system itself is so complex, and everything what happens there one by one is so meticulously organized and arranged by the Lord that is not so easy to replicate. So like that. And not just the system of digestion which is there in the stomach. Krishna is saying that pranapana samayuktaha. So there are life airs, 5 life airs, pran, apan, vyana, samana, and udan, which are circulating in the body. And with those life airs, Krishna is maintaining this body. So pranapana samayuktaha, you're taking the help of or utilizing the life air, outgoing and incoming. Pachamyannam chaturvidham. Krishna is helping us digest food. So this prana and apan indicate that even these airs within the body which are moving, they are also very, very important, because unless the bodily airs are in proper circulation, body is not fit. So there are so many diseases caused because of improper or imbalance in the air, which is technically in Ayurvedic language called as vata dosha. So if there is vata dosha, then there are so many difficulties. So that is how we see that how much important even the air is. So many times we breathe air and we are so casual, we are not aware. But it has great significant importance in functioning of the body, properly. So let's see what Srila Prabhupada is saying regarding this in the purport.
I will continue, Prabhu. Therefore, since he is helping the digestion of all kinds of foodstuff, the living entity is not independent in the eating process. Unless the Supreme Lord helps in digesting, there is no possibility of eating. He thus produces and digests the foodstuff. And by his grace, we are enjoying life. In the Vedanta Sutra, which is 1.2.27, this is also confirmed. Shabda divyo means natha pari pratistischa. The Lord is situated. Okay. The Lord is situated within sound and within the body, within the air, and even within the stomach as a digestive force.
Yeah. So this is what Prabhupada is pointing out, that how Lord is helping the living entity. And from this we can understand that living entity is not independent, even in the process of eating. So however, there may be living entities who may claim big for themselves, but still they don't become independent in any case, so like that. So this is how Srila Prabhupada is helping us to understand. So from this thing we also learn very important thing, as we saw that Krishna is our maintainer on cosmological level and on physiological level. So those who have no knowledge about this, they can take this knowledge and start appreciating the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, that how merciful the Lord is. And those who have already understood this, that Krishna is our maintainer, for them, like all of us, we can, our gratitude towards the Lord will increase, because we will come to know more about the Lord. So that's why we see that when Parikshit Maharaj is asking the question in 5th canto about how this creation is taking place. So the purpose behind this is that the more he will understand the glories of the Lord, how he has created this world, so the more his appreciation will increase. So that is the purpose of asking this question by Parikshit Maharaj, know more so that he can appreciate more the Supreme Lord. So similarly, as devotees, when we also learn these things, so our appreciation to the Lord increases, or rather should increase, and thereby our gratitude towards the Lord will also increase. So this is very important. In this particular verse, Krishna is mentioning Pachamyannam Chaturvidham, that I help to digest the 4 kinds of food stuff. So we also hear in our Mangalarti prayers, wherein it is said Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasado Swadanna Triptam Haribhaktasam. So what are these 4 types of foodstuffs? So that is explained by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and also Prabhupada explained this in the purport. One is bhakshya, that is those foodstuffs which are chewed with the teeth, like roasted chickpeas or any other food item which is solid. So that is bhakshya, chewed with the teeth. Second thing is bhojya, that is savored by the tongue without using teeth, like soups and all, which are in liquid form. So they are savored by the tongue. Tongue takes the taste with that without using teeth. Third is leya, that is liquid, like sugar candy. And fourth is chosya, that which are sucked, and the chewed portion is discarded. Example is sugarcane stick. So all these 4 kinds of Krishna is helping us to digest these 4 kinds of foods. So now Krishna further says, so we saw here that Krishna is helping us even on the physiological level. So now further Krishna says, not only I am there in the your stomach as a fire of digestion to help you in digestion, but I am also situated in your heart. Sarvasya chaham rudhi sannivishto.
Sarvasya chaham hridhi sannivishto
Jnanamapohanam
Matta
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
So this verse has got 2 parts, the first 2 lines and the next 2 lines. Apparently it appears connected, where in the first two lines, Krishna is saying that I am situated in the heart of all entities. From is coming knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. And in second two lines, suddenly Krishna is saying that I am all Vedas, I am to be known, and I am the compiler of Vedas and knower of the Vedas. So we'll see how these two things apparently which are discrete yet connected. First thing to be understood is, as we saw, that Krishna is not only present in our body in the form of fire in the stomach, but is also dwelling in the hearts of all kinds of living entities, the chara and achara, those who are living, moving and non-moving. These dwelling in the hearts of these living entities in the form of as the element of buddhi or intelligence. So this is very, very interesting to know. So when we hear this, that from Krishna is coming smriti, that is remembrance, knowledge, and even forgetfulness. So immediately, without understanding everything in great detail, somebody may say that, okay, actually I was going on the road, and then somebody has murdered somebody. So he may say, Krishna has given me this forgetfulness, that's why I just murdered. So now can that blame be put on Krishna? Because Krishna has given forgetfulness, so that's why I did this murder, or I committed this sinful activity, because Krishna has given me forgetfulness. So can a living entity say like that? No, living entity cannot say like that. Why? Because Krishna is not responsible for our activities, but rather is responsive towards the desires of the living entities. So when the living entity is desiring to perform some kind of sense gratification, so then Krishna is giving him smriti. He is giving him the smriti of his past sense gratification, that how he enjoyed the senses that time, or how did he enjoy this particular sense object. That remembrance Krishna gives to the living entity, because he's desiring again to perform that sense gratification. And then jnanam, and then Krishna also gives the jnanam. He also reminds the living entity now how he can once again enjoy the sense objects in the same way, or in a better way. So that kind of jnanam also Krishna provides. And apohanam, forgetfulness. Now what forgetfulness Krishna is giving? So those living entities who have awakened their knowledge by accepting, either through a spiritual master or through the words of scriptures. So when they have awakened their knowledge, and they are desirous to get out of this entanglement of material world. So for them, Krishna is ready to offer apohanam. He is ready to offer that forgetfulness of the past experiences of the senses with sense objects, and knowledge about how the senses enjoy the subjects. So Krishna is so merciful that he is ready to offer this kind of forgetfulness to the living entity who wants to get out of the conditionings. Very amazing to learn this, understanding that how Krishna is so merciful. So one who is in the process of getting liberated, Krishna is ready to make this material world upside down, for him. So he is ready to change the laws of material nature for him. So he may initially have all those past experiences stored in his mind of how to enjoy the sense objects. And he may have the knowledge also about how he can enjoy the sense object. But because he is now become sincere and taken up to the process of liberation, self-realization, or to be more specific in our case, Krishna consciousness. So Krishna is really very merciful to offer us the apohanam part. So Krishna is ready to wipe out all those past samskaras. He's ready to wipe out all the knowledge that may be there about enjoying the sense objects with the senses. So that is the maintenance of Krishna on the level of the spirit or the spiritual level. Krishna is ready to maintain us on spiritual level also. And if somebody is somebody who has awakened this kind of understanding about getting liberated, then Krishna is there. Vedeshcha sarvair aham eva vedyo. Vedanta krid ved videha chaham. So Krishna is there by he is there to the living entity in the form of Vedas. He has written down Vedas in the form through his literary incarnation Vyasadev, Vedanta krid. He has created those Vedas. And who is to be known from that Vedas? That also Krishna is explaining. Vedeshya sarvair aham eva vedya. That I am to be known from all the Vedas. And Veda vid eva chaham. That I am only the knower of the Vedas. I am the compiler. I am the knower. And I am, these two things Krishna is mentioning here. Like that. So now let's see what Srila Prabhupada has to offer us in the form of purport. Yeah, somebody can read this.
Antapravishta Shasta Gnananam. The living entity forgets as soon as he quits his present body, but he begins his work again, initiated by the Supreme Lord. Although he forgets, the Lord gives him the intelligence to renew his work where he ended his lost life. So not only does a living entity enjoy or suffer in this world, according to the dictation from the Supreme Lord, situated locally in the heart, but he receives the opportunity to understand the Vedas from him. If one is serious about understanding the Vedic knowledge, then Krishna gives the required intelligence. Why does he present in the Vedic knowledge for understanding? Because a living entity individually needs to understand Krishna. Hare Krishna.
So this part of the purport clarifies that what is the connection between the first two lines and the next two lines of the verse. So although the living entity may forget how to enjoy senses from his past life, but Krishna is ready to offer that. And if the living entity wanting to attain liberation, then he is ready to offer even that. So that is how we can see the connection between these two lines over here. And then this part of the purport.
One can attain perfection in 3 stages. By understanding Vedic literature, one can understand his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By performing the different processes, one can approach him, and at the end, one can attain the supreme goal, who is no other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this verse, the purpose of the Vedas, the understanding of the Vedas, and the goal of the Vedas are clearly defined. Hare Krishna.
This is how 3 things Prabhupada is mentioning, the 3 stages. That the purpose of Vedas is to understand the relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And understanding of the Vedas comes gradually by performing different processes to approach the Supreme Lord, like the Karma Kand, Jnana Kand, and all those things. And the end of that is actually coming to the understanding of Supreme Personality of Godhead. And finally, the goal of the Vedas is to attain the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in this way, these 3 stages are explained by Srila Prabhupada. Yes. So Krishna is our real maintainer in the cosmological level, on the physiological level, and also on the spiritual level. So he is providing all kind of help to the living entity who has assumed this so-called Purusha Bhava, the enjoying mentality in the material world. But if he comes to this understanding and takes up to the process to liberate oneself, then Krishna is there to offer all kind of help also. And even without that, Krishna is providing all kind of help to all kinds of living entities. Krishna doesn't distinguish, oh, he is atheist, so and he is theist, so I will provide him and I will not provide him. So equally everyone is distributed, and based on one's level of piety one gets benefited, and finally one progresses in his understanding. And if he is so fortunate, then he may get the association of devotees and then come to the right conclusion very soon, as is the case of many of us by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. So now, as Krishna is explaining here that I am the compiler of Vedas, then Krishna immediately goes ahead and says to Arjuna that I will explain you the essence of Vedanta. So then the next 3 verse, which is also called as Tri Shloki Gita, it explains.
Prabhuji, the previous this one, I have one question. Let us take example. If someone is cheating you, we accept that devotee, okay, because we did something wrong in past life. This is the result of that karma. But what about that the person who is cheating, they will also get some sinful reaction of this one, or we just consider that we did in the last life with those guys, that's why they are doing this one and I am getting the result of that one?
Now, this question has to be answered in 2 aspects. One is the principal aspect, and one is on the aspect of as being a devotee. So on the aspect of principle, if we see, whoever does any kind of activity, he is going to reap the result of that activity. That is very, very clear. So if it is that activity is generating pious result, then he will get a pious result. If that activity is impious, then he will get an impious result of that. So in principle, if we see like this, it is like that. So anyone who does anything to anyone, if it is not according to the scriptures or according to the codes of conduct, or if it is considered to be impious activity, then certainly that person will get the result of that impious activity. Now coming to the other way, how we should look at things in our life. So you already mentioned that as devotees, we should see this as our past karma and not even bother that what will happen to that person. A devotee never thinks, oh, he has done like this to me. Okay, that may be my karma, but let him also suffer because he is doing this bad karma. No, devotee doesn't think like that. Devotee is always a well-wisher and he always thinks good about everyone. Now, when that everyone is there, that means even the person who is blaspheming. So, while we were discussing 13th chapter, so in those verses wherein Krishna was explaining the process of knowledge, so there we saw for Dambha, we saw the example that a person who has acquired knowledge or is on the level of jnana, who has purified intelligence, he doesn't make a show off of his devotion. And we saw the example of Srivas Thakur, that when all kinds of Kali Puja paraphernalia was kept outside his house, so he simply went out and said, you see, all of you are thinking that I'm a great devotee, but just see, I am a simply Kali worshipper in mode of ignorance. He did not go around to try to justify, neither he tried to put the person down who was trying to put his name down. He did not counteract in that way also. He simply accepted this as mercy of the Lord and he just went ahead. He did not even think bad about the person who has done this. So we should also follow in that footsteps. Although we may not be at that particular instance, such thoughts may not arise because of our conditioning. But eventually, as we are thoughtful, we can just learn to forgive whatever has happened. So if we are able to forgive, then Krishna is also there to forgive us. But if we are not forgiving, then Krishna will never forgive us. So like that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Prabhuji. So, but Prabhuji, even if someone is cheating, if we keep quiet and will think that, okay, this is my past karma, we should accept this one. So is that also okay? Because see, we know that one is cheating. Okay, but if we say something, we should say or not at this time.
Yeah. So now that everything, all that depends upon our level and our faith. So certainly we cannot imitate Srivas Thakur because we are not on that level. Srivas Thakur has a level wherein when Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked him, how do you maintain such a big family? So Srivas Thakur simply clapped 3 times and said, that's it. If at the end of the third clap, if whatever is required is not there in the home, then I have decided to put a big stone around my neck and drown in Ganga. So certainly we are not on that level, and that's why we cannot imitate Srivas Thakur. But the principle has to be accepted. Now, when this principle is accepted, based on that, when somebody is cheating us, and if we understand that somebody is cheating us, that is very important. If we understand, there are 2 cases wherein one is that somebody cheated you, everything is done and gone, and it's finished. So, for example, you are traveling in a train and somebody did pickpocketing, and the person who was there, he has also gone out of the railway station, and he is not able to, you are not able to find him. So that's one instance. Second instance is wherein you get to know that somebody is cheating. Like, again, taking the example of pickpocketing. So somebody puts the hand in your pocket and you realize that somebody is stealing my money. So then certainly, as a natural way of protecting money of Krishna, we can always stand for it. It's not that, oh, okay, let him cheat, let him take money. What is there? It is my karma. No, that is where devotee is not naive. So devotee is always very shrewd. So if we read this Prabhupada's means the book of Giriraj Swami Maharaj on I will build your temple. So there many instances are explained wherein how Srila Prabhupada was so shrewd that he did not allow Nair to take over the land. So that way he fought back. But the mood behind that was, it was all done for Krishna. So that intent has to be very clear, that this money is Krishna's money. So I will not allow the person to cheat. Otherwise, Krishna's money is at stake. In that sense, so that should be the mood. So our Acharya has showed us that. So in that sense, then there is certainly so many options remaining. Is that okay, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Again, that also, like if somebody is cheating and we find, and then there are means and ways to do it. So we should try to do it in as gentlemanly way as possible, so that we don't unnecessarily activate our modes, especially the mode of passion. So we should try to be thoughtful and try to see what are the best possible ways so as the cheating doesn't happen. So I remember in one of the yatras in Vrindavan, we were along with Radhanath Swami Maharaj, and there in one evening lecture, so Maharaj made this announcement that there are situations that you are in Vrindavan Dham, and you have to deal with many Brajavasis in terms of purchasing some fruits or traveling in auto, rickshaw, and all those things. So you may be dealing with many Brajavasis and they may cheat you. So you should make sure that you don't offend them. At the same time, you should see that they don't cheat you. So now this is a easy said than done is said, no? So easy to say than done. So sometimes things are there, but we have to learn to apply the principle according to time, place, and circumstance. And certainly there will be challenge. But if we are really sincere, then as Krishna is saying through these words, that he will give the intelligence of how we can not get cheated, and at the same time we don't offend also. Okay?
Yes, Prabhuji.
So now these 3 verses will explain the 3 shloki Gita in Upanishadic language. Dvavimau purushau loke
Svavivo Purusho Loke.
Akshara eva cha.
Akshara eva cha.
Sarvani bhutani.
Sarvani Bhutani.
Tastokshara uchyate.
Kutastokshara Uchyate.
Translation.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu. Can I? There are two classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every living entity is fallible, and in the spiritual world, every living entity is called infallible. Hare Krishna.
So the kshara is termed here as a conditioned living entity, and akshara is those living entities which are infallible. So for a jnani, because this section is for jnanis, or rather explaining the process of jnana yoga. So for jnani, this akshara is the living entities who have attained Brahman, and kshara are those living entities which are conditioned. But because we are reading Bhagavad Gita in the light of a pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada is giving us higher understanding of Akshara, that not just those in Brahman, those in the spiritual world, because they are infallible, like that. So let's see certain things in this particular context. So conditioned living entity in contact with material world is called as Jiva Bhuta here. And they are also called as Kshara. And liberated souls, those who are in spiritual world, they are infallible and they are termed as Akshara. Now let's read from the purport of Srila Prabhupada. Please read.
According to the statement of Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, there are two classes of living entities. The Vedas give evidence of this, so there is no doubt about it. The living entities who are struggling in this world with the mind and five senses have their material bodies which are changing. As long as a living entity is changing, is conditioned, his body changes due to the contact with matter. Matter is changing, so the living entity appears to be changing. But in the spiritual world, the body is not made of matter. Therefore, there is no change. In the material world, the living entity undergoes 6 changes: birth, growth, duration, reproduction, then dwindling and vanishing. These are the changes of the material body. But in the spiritual world, the body does not change. There is no old age, there is no birth, there is no death. There all exists in oneness.
Yeah. So this is the explanation about two types of living entities. Now let's go ahead and hear from Krishna what he wants to say further. Uttama Purushastvanya
Uttama Purushastvanya
Matmetyudarataha
Paramatmetyudarataha
Lokatrayamavishya
Lokatrayamavishya
Artyabhyaya Ishvaraha. Yes, translation.
Hare Krishna. Besides these two, there is the greatest living personality, the Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord Himself, who has entered the three worlds and is maintaining them. Hare Krishna.
So, as we discussed, for Dhyanis, the previous verse talked about Brahman, which is worshipped by Dhyanis. Now, after Krishna has spoken about Brahman, which is worshipped by Dhyanis, Krishna speaks in this verse about Paramatma, which is worshipped by yogis. Uttama Purushastu Anyaha. So, he has already explained two types of living entities, Kshara and Akshara. And Uttama Purushastu Anyaha. Anyaha means there is another one. Paramatmeti Udaradaha. And he is called as Paramatma. And what he is doing? He has entered this world, Yo Lokatrayam. three worlds, upper, middle, and lower planetary system. Vivarti Abhyaya Ishvara, and he's maintaining them. So we saw in the 15.12 that how, no, 13, Gama Vishyacha Bhutani, that how Shirodakashai Vishnu is entering into all the planets and the atoms and the space between the atoms and within the heart of all living entities. So in that way, he's maintaining all the living entities and the material world on the cosmic level. So here Krishna is talking about Paramatma, which is worshipped by yogis. And a word tu, Uttama Purushas tu Anyaha. That is making the distinction between the previous two types of two types of entities and the third entity which is being spoken over here. So is that clear? No
Yes, Prabhu.
response.
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. So I'll repeat that in last verse, in the previous verse, Krishna spoke two types of entities, and here Krishna is speaking about the third entity, which is different than previous two, and Paramatma, that is nothing but the object of worship of yogis. Let's see the purport. Please read.
The Upanishadic verse runs as follows. Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam. The purport is that amongst all the living entities, both conditioned and liberated, there is one supreme living personality, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who maintains them and gives them all the facility of enjoyment according to different work. That Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. A wise man who can understand him is eligible to attain perfect peace, not others. Hare Krishna.
So this is quite clear what Srila Prabhupada is explaining about the different living entity from Kshara and Akshara. Now the third verse explains something more than that. Yasmad Ksharam Atitoham Aksharadapi Chottamaha Ke Vedecha
Atmasmi Loka Vedecha
Purushottamaha. Translation.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Because I am transcendental, beyond both the fallible and infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as the Supreme Person.
Okay. So as we saw previously that Krishna spoke about the object of worship of Jnanis, that was the Brahman, in verse number 16. And then Krishna spoke about the object of worship of yogis in 17th verse. And now here Krishna is speaking about the object of worship of devotees, that is Bhagwan, which is called here as Purushottamaha. So let's dwell a little more on this verse. It's very important verse. So here Krishna is saying that I am superior to Jiva, Ksharam, and I am superior to Brahman, Akshara, and also to Paramatma, Api. So if we see the verse, Yasmad Ksharam Atitoham Aksharad Api Chottamaha. Here the word Api explains Paramatma. Kshara is fallible living entities, Aksharad is infallible living entities, or Brahman, and Api is Paramatma. So I am superior to that Paramatma also. So what is that verse where Krishna explains that I am the goal or I am the supreme object for the yogis? Anyone remembers? From the 6th chapter. Who is the best yogi?
योगिनामपि सर्वेषां
योगिनामपि सर्वेषां
Very good. Atmaten antaratma.
श्रद्धावान् भजते माम्.
So, this verse explains that how Krishna is actually the real object of worship of the best yogis. The best yogis are those who directly worship Krishna. And in this verse, the word cha, yasmad aksharam atitoham, aksharad api cha uttamaha. So this word cha over here, what does it signify? The word cha indicates Krishna is superior even to Lord of Vaikuntha and other forms of the Bhagavan. So there are so many forms of the Bhagavan, but in this particular chapter, in this particular verse, Krishna is making it clear by the word cha that he is superior even to all the other forms of Bhagavan. So which is the verse from Bhagavatam which explains that? Wherein Shukadeva Goswami gives the list of all, Sutta Goswami gives the list of all incarnations, and finally he comes to that verse. Yes, Ete Chamsha Kalapumsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. 1:328. So there Sutta Goswami has explained that how Krishna is the source of all other incarnations. So actually, if we see the verse in Bhagavatam, which says Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavan iti Shabdyate. How does that begin? Tattvavidam Vidas.
Vadanti tattvavidassatvam.
Yes, yes. Vadanti Tattvavidam Tattvat Yajnanam Advayam. So, those who are Tattvavid, those who are knowledgeable, those who know the Tattva, they say that Advayam, Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, and Bhagavan. So these three things, Advayam, there is no difference between Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So then why Krishna is making difference, or why we are discussing these differences? So that differences is nothing but it is difference in the observing difference in the worshippers. Observing is the difference in the worshipper in terms of sadhana and the results. Therefore, the difference is designated. What type of sadhana they do, based on that type of result they will get. So according to the result, difference is designated. Otherwise, there is no difference between Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So sadhana of Jnani, when he does that sadhana, his realization is only up to the level of Brahman. And when the yogi does his sadhana, his realization reaches only up to the point of Paramatma, whereas when a bhakta does his sadhana, he reaches the realization of Bhagavan. And result of Jnani and yoga, or the person performing Jnani, yogi and Jnani, the result of that is liberation, whereas the result of bhakti is one becomes associate of Lord in prema. But interesting thing is to know that without bhakti, even the Jnani and yogi doesn't attain liberation. Without bhakti, Jnani and yogi doesn't attain liberation. That means when the Jnani is performing his sadhana, he has to include some anga of devotion in his sadhana to achieve his success of liberation, to achieve the success of his sadhana. And same is with the yogi. In order to achieve the result of his sadhana, he must include some aspect of bhakti in his sadhana, without which he will not attain the result. Because bhakti is the element which gives the result to the Jnani and yogi. And in that terms, we can see Bhagavatam quotes this verse, Nishkarmyamapyachyuta bhava varjitam na shobhate jnanamalam niranjanam. That it says that knowledge of self-realization, even though free from all material affinity, does not look well if devoid of conception of infallible God. This is from 1.5.12. And similarly, for a yogi also, there's a verse which mentions that how unless the yogi performs some part of devotional service, he cannot achieve. So that is 10.14.5. I could not put that in the slide, but the 10.14.5. So the translation goes like this. O Almighty Lord, in the past, many yogis in this world achieved the platform of devotional service by offering all their endeavors unto you and faithfully carrying out their prescribed duties. Through such devotional service, perfected by process of hearing and chanting about you, they came to understand you. O infallible one, and one could easily surrender to you and achieve your supreme abode. So, point is that the worshippers of Brahman and Paramatma, they must perform some kind of bhakti. But Bhakta, he doesn't have to perform any kind of worship to Brahman and Paramatma. There is no necessary of that. He directly does his devotional activities, and the surprising thing is that by bhakti he gets, or he is what do you say? He is qualified to get material enjoyment. Means even if somebody desires for Swarga, so bhakti may award that also, or liberation, and the most important thing is prema. So we are saying akamo sarva kamo va moksha kama udarati tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusha param. One may be sakama, with full of material desires. One may be moksha kama, desiring liberation, or one may be akama, without any material desires. Still, if one performs bhakti, then he will get purified. So the point is that if by worshipping Brahman and Paramatma alone, if one doesn't get liberation, then what to talk of prema and higher aspects? So that's why the aspect of Bhagavan is superior to Brahman and Paramatma, even though is not different from Brahman and Paramatma. So this is very important. Why it is superior? Because the process to achieve Bhagavan is so important, that is called as bhakti, that even those worshipping Brahman and Paramatma have to perform that. Whereas the person whose object of worship is Bhagavan needs not to do any other thing than bhakti. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives the example of a huge fire. So if there is cold and you put some small candle, then your cold will not go. But if you have huge fire, then the cold will go. So like that, he compares this with the candle with Brahman and Paramatma and fire with Bhagavan aspect. But in that also he says, among all the Bhagavan aspects, Krishna is the supreme most, who is compared with the sun. So as compared to the huge fire, even sun is better. So that's why Krishna is best among all, because Krishna alone gives the fruit of worship. Krishna gives it even to his enemies, like Aghasur and Baghasur, etc. Glory of Purushottama is Uttama Purushaha. So here Krishna is declaring himself, although here we see that Krishna is present in 200 forms, but he is declaring himself as Purushottama to explain this understanding to us, that how he is superior to both the Brahman and Paramatma aspect, and how only by bhakti can he be achieved, and how even the worshippers of Brahman and Paramatma need to perform bhakti to some extent to achieve the results of their worship. So in this sense, we see that Krishna has established himself as Purushottama in this particular chapter. Is that okay? Any questions in this regard?
I have one question.
Yes.
You mentioned that for Jnani and Yogi to get liberation, Bhakti is important. So how is that? Do you mean because it is Jnana Yoga and Ashtanga Yoga? Because yoga means linking with Supreme. So unless that is done, liberation is not achieved. Is that the reason why you're saying, or how is Bhakti needed? How do they actually realize that they have to perform Bhakti for liberation?
They don't realize that, but as a matter of tattva, we understand that by the mercy of our acharyas. Why we are discussing this, to understand the supremacy of bhakti, that how bhakti is independent. It is not dependent on any other process. Whereas the other processes of worshipping Brahman and Paramatma, it is dependent on bhakti. That is the point highlighted over here. So the independence of bhakti is what is explained through this. So that is to be understood. Whether they understand or not, that is not important. Unless they perform, that is the point. Unless they perform some anga of bhakti, they don't get the result. Is that okay?
That if he is a Jnani, then he gets he reaches Brahman, and if he is a yogi, then he reaches Paramatma. Paramatma realization. So bhakti aspect, I am not able to connect into that. Even for liberation, how is it even for liberation that they will need that? Then what is the difference between bhakti and which aspect of bhakti can it be? Can you give with an example? Explain with an example.
The difference is that if I can guess your question is like this, that if for getting liberation also bhakti is needed, and for going to spiritual world also bhakti is needed, then what is the difference?
Yes.
I hope, is this what you are asking? Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah. So this is called as Mishrita Bhakti. So they are not performing pure devotional service. When we talk of bhakti, that has to be very, very clearly understood. Their main goal is to attain liberation. But they will not get that goal unless they inculcate in their program some aspect of bhakti, be it worship of deity, where we see that that Panchopasana system has been established by Shankaracharya, wherein one worships 5 kinds of devatas, Vishnu, Surya, Ganesha, Shiva, and Parvati, like that. So this Panchopasana is there. So there Vishnu is worshipped. So this worship of Vishnu is what? It's some aspect of bhakti. Because bhakti means only towards Vishnu and his other expansions, or Krishna and his expansions. So that is bhakti. So when that kind of limb is included, it could be Shravanam, it could be Kirtanam, anything out of those 9 forms of devotional service. So when that comes in their sadhana somewhere or the other, then they get the result of their original sadhana. Their original sadhana is not bhakti. Their original goal is not prema or spiritual world. Their original sadhana is of jnana. Their original goal is moksha or liberation, or merging into the Brahman. That always remains the same. But unless and until some aspects of bhakti are not involved, and by default they are involved. So that is a glory of Vedic culture, that some aspects of bhakti are always involved in all the places. And that is how they get the result of their worship or their sadhana. This is to be understood. But if somebody is taking to bhakti directly pleasing, then he doesn't have to take any other process to achieve the result. What is the result of bhakti? Pleasing the Lord, going back to Godhead, and the most important, the prema towards the Lord. So for that, he doesn't have to include anything else. He doesn't have to add anything else. Bhakti itself is sufficient and independent to award that result.
Got it, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandat Pranam, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, how
just a
this...
follow-up question.
Okay. So Mataji, is it okay if we take the follow-up question first and then come to you?
Yeah. Sure, Prabhuji. Sure, Prabhuji. Please carry.
Yes, Prabhu, please go ahead.
Yes, Prabhuji. See, because as you mentioned, bhakti is there in remaining things like in karma yoga, jnana. Okay, so because of that some bhakti is there. Because of that reason only, we're just calling it adding a yoga. Otherwise, we would not have added, no, Prabhuji. Correct. So as you mentioned, if that is not there, we would not call that as a yoga. Is that understanding is correct, Prabhuji?
Yes, that is correct. Again, they also understand that the bhakti is not the primary thing for them. The primary thing for
that is correct.
That bhakti is just some part is there.
The primary thing is jnana, for example. Yeah. The primary thing is jnana, but jnana has bhakti. Because of that reason, we are calling it as a jnana yogam. So their main purpose is karma, doing karma, but there's some mix of bhakti is there. We are calling it as a karma yogam. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Mata, you can ask.
Prabhuji, this Brahman realized yogis and Paramatman realized yogis, after they realized about Brahman and Paramatma, they attained some lokas, right, Prabhuji? They also, that is also spiritual or material, Prabhuji? And how they attained Bhakti Yoga, Prabhuji? How they come to know about Bhakti Yoga?
Yeah. So as I mentioned in the previous answer of Mataji, that they are not aware that bhakti has to be performed. And while they are performing some limbs of bhakti, they are not aware that that is the real reason giving me the success of my. So that one thing is to be understood. Second thing, what is the result they are achieving? He is achieving the result of Brahman. So that means they are reaching or merging into the Brahman.
Prabhuji, your voice is breaking, Prabhuji, and so much of noise.
Can everyone else mute, please? So is it okay now?
Yes, Prabhuji. Please.
So the point is that the goal of worship of Gyanis is to attain Brahman. They want to simply merge into Brahman. So they reach that state only. If they are practicing that purely and till the last point, they don't get captured by trap of the Maya. So if they reach, then they reach Brahman. And those Jnani yogis who are worshipping, so they reach the realization of Paramatma. So they are fortunate enough to sometimes even see the Paramatma within their own heart as a practice of their yoga system. But again, as Srila Prabhupada explains us many times, that those people who reach that stage, sometimes they get the understanding that I am that, Aham Brahmasmi. So Aham Brahmasmi is there, that is just explain that we are in the qualitatively same nature as that of Brahman or the Supreme Lord as Satchidananda. But if because Maya is there to trap, so if that yogi gets trapped up with this idea that I am that Paramatma, then he gets trapped up in the Maya's last snare, as Srila Prabhupada explains. And then again he has to continue his sojourn in this material world. And the one Jnani who has reached Brahman, that also Prabhupada explains that because they don't take shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord, they again fall down. So attaining Brahman is explained in two ways. One is in this particular world only, the person realizes that I am not this body and I don't need to do any activity of the body which will entangle me. So then he comes to that level. But because there is no other higher activity, there is no other positive activity, so again he comes down to the level of performing material activity. And Prabhupada explained that such so-called fallen people, then they open up hospitals and charity work for the human beings. So that Prabhupada explained. So they fall down from that position of which position? That I am not this body kind of position, they fall down. Because they don't have any engagement on the level of soul. So that's why they fall down. And second thing regarding Paramatma, as we saw, the yogis, they have this last snare that they think this Paramatma to be themselves, and they also again fall down. So like that. So they don't reach any planet or something like that. Only if they are very fortunate. So Prabhupada explains that if that person, Jnani, in the practice of his Jnana, if he gets association of some devotees, then his life may be turned. And also in the same case as a yogi, if he also gets the association of devotees, then his life also may take a turn. So only hope for a living entity in this material world is association of devotees. So lava matra sadhu sangha sarva siddhi. Even the fraction of association with devotees can perfect one's life. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Fine. Any other question?
Prabhuji, in that particular case, I can.
Your voice is not audible.
Sorry, Prasad, I muted you by mistake. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, no problem, no problem. So we can take the example of a Sukha Maharshi, Sukadev Goswami, okay, who was born as like a Mahajnani, and then with the understanding of Bhagavatam from his father, so he become like a pure devotee. So we can take it like that, no Prabhuji. Yeah,
Yes,
that could be one example.
Correct.
Yeah, with the explanation what you have given. Yeah. Thank
Another
you,
example that of four Kumaras who at the gate of the Vaikuntha, when they just get the smell of tulasi, which is offered at the lotus feet of the Lord, aroma of the tulasi, so that creates turbulence in their heart, and from there, they get transformed. That is yet another example. And then for yogi, there are several examples like Shaubari Muni, who was performing his yoga sadhana underwater, and he got allured, and later on he got out and married, and then finally he got to realize this folly, and then he takes up to the shelter of the Lord and becomes a devotee, like that. Okay, so let's go to the last two verses. It's 8:22. I think we will take up last two verses on Wednesday and then go to the 16th chapter, so that we can nicely conclude also. Otherwise, it will just covering up the verses will happen if we do it now. Okay, so we'll end here now. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Jai.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Lilananda Prabhu would like to say something. There are some important.
No, just had a question, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, tentatively, when are you planning to finish the course, Prabhuji?
Prabhuji, your voice is very low, Lilananda Prabhu.
Oh, is it audible now?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
Better, Prabhu.
Prabhuji,
Better, improve.
tentatively, what dates are we looking at, Prabhuji, to finish the unit 3?
I was told to complete it by 29th of April.
29th of April. 29th of April. Okay. So do you think we are on track for that, Prabhuji?
Yes, we will do.
Acha. The 29th of April, matlab, then we have to plan for a test, maybe 1 week later, something like that. Okay, I'll talk to Prabhuji then.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, Prabhuji, I just wanted to check on the dates.
No, I just wanted to say, would you like to add something to what we discussed?
No, I was listening. Sorry. It was very nice discussion. Thank you. I learned a lot of things today. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you very much. Vijanatana.
Thank you.